Good afternoon. We're going to go through a little bit of Chapter 9. We're going to finish that up, and then we're going to have you listen to Chapter 10, which is saved to your Google Classroom. So yesterday we read Chapter 9. We didn't quite get all the way through it. You had 5 pages left, but we're going to go through a little bit of that today. So I'm going to ask you to have your papers out that are your 7 through 9 questions, and we're going to have you fill them in, and then we're going to have Mr. Van Briesen stop and start the video as I go on. Okay, so Chapter 9, the first question is asking you about the fact that Scout is contentious. She is contentious means quick to fight. So at your tables, prove that with this chapter. How is she contentious? Okay, you probably discovered that, her first thought to deal with Francis is to fight. Her first thought to deal with Cecil Jacobs is to fight. She thinks with her fists first. But the fact that she wants to not disappoint her dad and not fight Cecil Jacobs, well, for some reason, when Francis says exactly the same thing, it makes her feel like she needs to defend her father. So we want to talk. So question number 18 is, I'm going to have you take a moment and at your table try to describe all of the different family members of the Finch family. Okay. Hit pause now. All right. So Cousin Ike is he is the Civil War veteran, and he is in the story to kind of say the Finches are good Southern family. Uncle Jack is the favorite uncle. Okay, remember he is a doctor. He asks Miss Maudie to marry him all the time. He's probably in his late 40s. Okay, he has a cat named Rose Elmer. I think I spelled that right. Of which he takes pictures of. He spanks her without actually finding out both sides. He hates direct questions. When she asks him what a whore lady is, he basically lies to her because he doesn't want to explain the facts of life to her. And he's also the baby of the family. Okay, so now if we go to Aunt Alexandra is the middle child because Atticus is the oldest. She's the one that lives on Finch's Landing. Oops. Okay. She had one son and one grandchild, and that's Francis. And she is always concerned about what others think. Okay. So Francis is probably only saying what Aunt Alexandra probably has said, that Atticus is going to ruin the family and that he shouldn't be taking this case and he should let somebody else do it. Okay? Uncle Jimmy is, all we really know is he's very quiet. He's never said anything to Scout other than get off the fence, and that's about it. Okay? I forgot one thing about Aunt Alexandra. She was a good cook. Okay? And, oh my goodness, what happened? There we go. Sorry. All kinds of problems here. There we go. And then we've got Francis. Okay? He's a nerdy child, because what child asks for bow ties and 5 shirts and pants with buttons? And so, he is not a typical 8-year-old. Remember, he's 1 year older than Scout, and he loved to get Scout's goat and to make her mad. Okay. All right. So I'm going to have you take and answer the next question. What is Scout's stage? Okay. And of course, her stage is that she likes to fight. Okay. We're going to take a moment and kind of look for a picture of Finch's Landing here. It probably looked a little bit like this. I'm going to kind of copy, and so you guys can kind of see me do this all at once. But Finch's Landing is is described pretty clearly. It's probably a typical southern plantation. But remember, it's been in the family for a very long time. Okay, question number 21, it says, why do you think Alexandra was so critical of Scout? Probably, as Atticus said, she never had girls, but Scout is not a lady. She's not a typical little girl. Well, why should she? She lives in a house full of boys. And Alexandra wants her to be all prim and proper. Now remember, when Scout gets in trouble at the end, Scout gets in trouble for swearing, and then she lies because she doesn't want her dad to know exactly why she was fighting. And Uncle Jack spanks her. And at the end of the chapter, Atticus gives Jack some really good advice. And that advice is always just tell them the truth. You don't have to give them more information than what they have. Just give them the truth. Then at the very end, it is one of the most important scenes in the book. And so I'm going to have you turn to page 88, if you will. Okay. And I'm going to read a little bit aloud to you. It says, Atticus, you've never laid a hand on her. I admit that, so far as I've been able to get by with threats. Jack, she minds me as well as she can. Doesn't come up to scratch half the time, but she tries. That's not the answer, said Uncle Jack. No, the answer is she knows, I know, she tries. That's what makes the difference. What bothers me is that she and Jem will have to absorb some pretty ugly things soon. I'm not worried about Jem keeping his head, but Scout just as soon jump on someone as look at him if her pride's at stake. I waited for Uncle Jack to break his promise. He still didn't. Remember, she made Jack promise that he wouldn't tell Atticus why the fighting actually happened. Atticus, how bad is this going to be? You haven't had too much chance to discuss it. It couldn't be worse, Jack. The only thing we've got is a black man's word against the Ewells. The evidence boils down to you did, I didn't. The jury couldn't possibly be expected to take Tom Robinson's word against the Ewells. Are you acquainted with the Ewells? Uncle Jack said yes, he remembered them. He described them to Atticus, but Atticus said, you're a generation off. The present ones are the same, though. What are you going to do then? Well, before I'm through, I intend to jar the jury a bit. To jar the jury means make them think. I think we have a reasonable chance on appeal, though. I really can't tell at this stage, Jack. You know, I'd hoped to get through life without a case of this kind, but John Taylor pointed at me and said, you're it. Let this cup pass from you, eh? That's a biblical reference, like Jesus, when Jesus was in the Last Supper, let this cup pass from me. And so basically he's saying, you know, I don't have a choice, I need to do this. Right, but do you think I could face my children otherwise? You know what's going to happen as well as I do, Jack. And I hope and pray I can get Jem and Scout through it without bitterness. And most of all, without catching Macomb's usual disease. And Macomb's usual disease, unfortunately, is racism. And we're going to talk about how racism is as much of this case, Macomb is as much a character in this story as anything else. It's slow-moving, doesn't like to change, and it's racist. Why reasonable people go stark raving mad when anything involving a Negro comes up is something I don't pretend to understand. I just hope that Jem and Scout come to me for their answers instead of listening to the town. I hope they trust me enough. Gee, Louise, my Scout jumped. I stuck my head around the corner. Sir, go to bed. I scurried to my room and went to bed. Uncle Jack was a prince of a fellow not to let me down, but I never figured out how Atticus knew I was listening, and it was not until many years later that I realized he wanted me to hear every word he said. Sometimes when kids want to listen in on parents' conversations or adult conversations, it makes They understand it better than if they're told straight to their face. So Atticus wanted her to think she was getting an inside scoop and that she would think about it a little bit. Now we're going to have you go to chapter 10. Chapter 10 is considered one of the most famous chapters in all of To Kill a Mockingbird. And you're going to see me bring up some images here. Okay, this image right here is a really famous one. Atticus is going to shoot down a rabid dog here in chapter 10. And this is a completely symbolic chapter. The rabid dog is going to be like the racism that exists in Macomb County. And it's going to be how Atticus is in the middle of the street, no one's there to help him, and he's trying to take it out by himself. When the movie was made, Harper Lee said that there was one chapter that had to stay exactly the same in the book as in the movie as it was in the book. The dialogue is exactly the same. Everything is the same in chapter 10. So using the link that is in Google Classroom, I want you to listen to chapter 10 or read it on your own. But chapter 10 needs to be read, and then Mr. Van Briesen will give you the worksheet that will have you go over the questions for chapter 10. All right, we will see you on Monday. Have a very, very good day.